The Women's College acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we are recording this podcast, the Turrbal and Jagera people of the Meanjin region. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and recognise that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are Australia's first storytellers, communities and creators of culture. We recognise their continuing connection to the land and the waters. Welcome to Voices of Influence, a podcast brought to you by the Women's College within the University of Queensland. I'm your host and producer, Tess Feller. Our episodes are designed to ignite inspiration and empower young adults. Tune in for engaging discussions with diverse professionals who share actionable insights to navigate early adulthood. This podcast is all about mental health and wellbeing and not a substitute for professional mental health advice, treatment, or assessment. The advice given in this episode is general in nature, but if you're experiencing emotional distress, please reach out to a trusted person, practitioner, or call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Any resources mentioned in the episode will be included in the notes. Today, on our second episode, we have Nicole Evans and Dr. Kylie Armstrong, the co-founders of ConnectedLE, an organisation that utilises science and storytelling to empower individuals to tackle mental health challenges in their communities. They are passionate advocates for preventative health education. Tune in as they share insights on mental health with key proactive takeaways for uni students. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks, Tess. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, lovely to be here.
Very excited to have you here. How are you both?
Really good, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tess. Beautiful morning. And excited to be here to talk about all things mental health and wellbeing.
Which is really important to us. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful morning out there. It's sunny and we had a lovely walk over. So
we did. It's the best time of year, isn't it? I love this time.
Yeah. So we're very excited to have you here as our second guest. And before we dive into all things mental health, I'd like to ask you both for a recommendation for our listeners. Is there something you've been reading, watching, listening to that you could benefit from? I realise I've put you on the spot here a bit. But
Goodness, I'm so excited to tell you this because on the car on the way here, I'm listening to The Art of Risk by Dr. Richard Harris, and it's about the cave divers, but it's more than that. It's people's stories about taking risk and dealing with adversity. But the other recommendation that I have that I'm reading at the moment is called The Girl Who Fell from the Sky. So that's the story of Emma Carey, who went skydiving in Switzerland and landed on a stomach in a wheelchair, learnt to walk. It's one of the most beautiful books you could ever read. So I recommend it to all university students.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Tess, I'm working through The Good Life. So the book about the 85-year-old study, the Harvard study, and there's so many learnings from that study. It's now spanning 3 generations. So you can imagine the deep research that has taken place about people's lives and what makes a good life. So, yeah, I'm just about finished that. And it is full of tabs, full of notes, and we're excited because we'll probably share some of the outcomes of it.
I agree,
today.
and I just want to say that I think is my favourite book of all time, The Good Life.
I have heard you ladies talk about that book before, and I've it's on my notes list of a million books that I need to read, but maybe I'll finally get into it after this.
Good present for people for birthdays as well. It's just such a great book. I feel like everyone needs to read it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Very, very insightful recommendations. To begin, I was wondering if you could tell us about your wonderful organisation. What are your aims?
Thank you, Tess. Well, look, at ConnectedLE, I would say our main aim is to use storytelling and science to build mental fitness and thriving communities. We're very mission-driven. We exist to create connected humans through preventative health education. We are an online mental health ed tech company, and Kylie and I both passionately believe in the power of connection and community. Now, I'm a medical educator and I'm also a mum of 3 teenagers, so I see firsthand the struggles that people are going through and, the work that we've done within the universities with our workshops and our mental wellbeing peer responder course. And so we're really passionate about educating in the awareness of how to spot signs that something is just not quite right and how to be brave enough to support others and have that conversation.
which is so topical. Yeah, I'm super excited that we can, share with people together.
And Tess, I think sort of the backstory, we're only 3 years old, so we're really quite young. And it started, the conversations with Nicole and I, around 2020. It was actually around the time of COVID, and we could see the mental health of our populations globally deteriorating. But we also knew, when you look back at the data, that it was already occurring. It was just COVID had fast-tracked that. So we knew there were changes happening in society, and in our country there were a number of reports in 2021 that there was the Mental Health Productivity Commission report, there was the Victorian Royal Commission into the mental health system, and then we had the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. And every single one of those policy and national reports were steering towards a better way of delivering education, threaded throughout all of them, but they kind of weren't looking at the how. And we've experienced a number of education providers ourselves. And so we did a deep dive, didn't we, Nick? And it was all through 2021 that we were looking at the policy environment, looking at what else was out there, and talking to people with lived experience as well. And what we discovered was most of the training is in the illness model. It's around people's conditions. And that has a really incredible role to play, those types of training. But there wasn't much in the proactive prevention, early intervention space. So that was what really kickstarted ConnectedLE, and we did a whole co-design process before we launched into developing the online platform and the learning management system. So that's a roundabout way of saying we're all prevention, proactive, early intervention space, nipping the bud early, trying to catch people before they fall through the cracks, and busting all those myths out there so people can get the early help they need.
Yeah, which is so important, especially as somebody in a college environment who is surrounded by, 200 girls on any given day. You realise how much people need preventative education. If you are preventing something, you're not just band-aiding it. Which is a lot of what's out there at the moment. So I'm glad you found a niche and you ran with it.
And what we know, Tess, colleges are really unique environments because we know it's a transition period that also goes along with when the likelihood of a diagnosis might come about. So that's a tricky time. And so people are navigating that. So, it's important that people do have the mental health literacy to be able to know what to spot and how to help others.
And can I ask, why do you think it is so prevalent once you're 18 and once you've finished high school? Because I've even noticed it myself, like all throughout high school, maybe a little bit anxious, stuff like that. But then it was almost like once I moved away from home and came to uni and things like that, stuff started to unravel. So is there something that actually says, yes, this is why it starts to unravel?
I think the first thing we've got to recognise is that mental health is complex.
Yeah.
As humans, we all have different experiences. We all have, come in with different perspectives from different environments. So that's the first thing. There's, what one person will experience will be different to another. But what we do know is major transition periods in a person's life is typically when, you may experience, differences, and you may start to notice, I'm not coping as well as I used to. So there are periods like when you're leaving school, parenthood, transitions into parenthood, transitions into the workplace. And then it goes throughout life. Even transition into retirement can be a tricky time.
Yeah, wow.
So it's usually those transition periods that, where there's more uncertainty.
Yeah, I was going to say change is classic, and scaffolding of school, where you're in a safe space. You go, it's 8:30 to 3:30, and then you've got your sport, and then all of a sudden that's all gone. So I think that's why university, that transitional stress is massive.
And society's changing as well. And your generation, more than any, have been exposed to the technology world. We've also got a lot going on in our societies around political instability, climate, impacts. Look at the global world and what's happening at the moment. So there's a lot of change, cost of living pressures. And then you have a look at the technology impacts from, what we're seeing with the big social media giants and responsibility around what is online is causing harm. So there's a lot going on And we would say, Nick, that your generation, the Gen Zs, so they're people born in 1996 through to 2012, you're really that first generation that has lived in the physical world and the virtual world.
Such an interesting way to put it, yeah.
Well, it is. You think about it, like your age right now, you're in your early 20s, late teens, right? So Facebook was just coming to life. You know, there were a whole lot of things that were starting to emerge in the social media. Same with technology. And I would go so far to say, Nicole and I, we're in the X generation. Between us, we've got 6 Gen Zs, and we know that as a generation, you're amazing generation. There's a lot of social justice built in there, and it's probably from the lens of where you've perceived the world. You've seen more than any other generation because it's been at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And we were the parents trying to work out, how do we support this? How do we manage it?
How do you navigate that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tricky.
So in the decades since our kids are, they're coming up into their, your age, and mine are in their 20s, we've learned a lot. Yeah. There's a lot that I think our next generation of families coming through know around those digital boundaries. We know those things. So I would say you're unique.
Yeah.
Your generation. And there's also a role that you can play in that as far as, having a voice. Because from a lived experience perspective, which is what we're about, you really have gone through that, you've lived it, and you're all coming out of age where you can actually have a say and make a difference in the world. So we would encourage you to do that.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, and I guess it's learning to navigate social media and then learning to navigate uni, which I guess is you're not as supported by lecturers and things like that in comparison to high school. So that's navigating that, and it's navigating friendships and family and everything. So, yeah, I guess it's just like massive factors that play into it, and I guess everyone's different. So
absolutely. It's that independence, isn't
That's right. It's managing change and uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. Which then leads into, I'm personally curious, and I know many of our listeners will be, what is the difference between mental health and then mental well-being?
So if we look at mental health, we look at it on a spectrum. So we're talking about, if someone's mentally well, they're fostering connections, they've got relationships, their day-to-day functioning, and they're coping, and they've got a good quality of life. And, if someone is mentally unwell, it doesn't usually just happen overnight. There's usually, as I said, across that spectrum. But if they're unwell, we're typically talking about someone who may have a diagnosable condition. So something like depression or an eating disorder. And typically they'll be under the care of a practitioner. And they may be, have talking therapy. They may be have medication. And, one thing we also know a lot of practitioners are prescribing is in the social prescribing space. So they're prescribing exercise, they're prescribing meditation, breathing exercises, because we know now that they work and they really help people to regulate and support themselves. So essentially, if someone's mentally unwell, they typically, it affects how they feel, how they think, and how they act. But on the other hand, when someone is mentally well, we're talking about mental well-being, it's a state of thriving in various areas of life, such as your relationships, your work, and you're actively participating. But it also goes a bit deeper than that. There's the deep meaning and implication for our lives. So it's that having that sense of purpose, knowing and living by your values. It's about giving back, pursuing interests, and that desire for growth. Often it will impact how people think, and handle emotions and how they act. Because we all know humans will have good days and bad days, and things will go up and down, and we'll have wobbles. That's normal. That's a part of everyday life. But mental well-being is around how we respond to those stressors and setbacks, how we navigate change, how we navigate uncertainty, as Nicole said, and it's our ability to adapt. So it's a bit of that grit, that perseverance.
And as you know from our workshops that we've done at Women's College, there are definitely skills and things we can practice and develop to work on our mental fitness. So, we're big believers of self-compassion and self-care, self-acceptance, developing a growth mindset, having healthy habits like sleep and exercise, embracing our imperfections, and thriving in the face of adversity.
So in summary, our mental health is really around our overall social, emotional, psychological well-being, and typically around those diagnosable conditions when someone's unwell. And our mental well-being is a state of thriving in various areas of our life.
I love that. That is so key. And, now I know what the difference is. What are some signs that we can recognize as friends, as peers, that people are struggling with their mental health that we can identify? Yeah.
Such an important question. So I think one of the most important things you can do is to be aware of your friends and to check in with them regularly and try and connect regularly. So also look out for those subtle signs that something's changed. Were they loud now? Are they more quiet? Are they less social, or are they drinking more? Like, you just look out for subtle changes, and then be brave enough to ask, how are things going for you? We talk about that with an open question. How are things for you, Tess? But be ready then to deeply listen to the answer and be ready to then support. So staying connected, hence what we call ConnectedLE, but staying connected, this is so important for your friends, but it's also important for yourself.
Yeah, and I guess then it's also, I really like what you just said about wanting to listen. Don't check in on your friends if you're then just wanting to tick a box, and then be like, okay, I've checked in on them, but I don't actually want to hear how they are. Because a lot of the time, from personal experience, if somebody's checking on me and I'm feeling like, okay, I'm going to open up to them and share how I'm going, if they're then being like, oh, okay, that's great, or glad you're feeling a bit better, or something that will cut off the conversation, I think that then can have a really negative impact on the person struggling. So I really like how you said be ready to listen.
Just add to that, conversation piece, that, having that open listening, but then knowing what to do with that. If someone does disclose something where they're distressed, what do you then do with that information? And I think that's where it's, we all have a really important role to play in having, knowing what's out there. And there's so many amazing organisations and things. And even as a first touch point, just, sending a text with a link to a support service or a counselling service. So doing something proactive as a way of sort of following up if someone has, has disclosed something. And of course, if someone's ever in crisis, always making sure you reach out to someone else to support, or calling, triple O if there's, an emergency of some kind, and not being afraid to do that, because you're helping that person in that moment.
Yeah, and I really like the saying there, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
So you got to fill your own cup first. So, there are those online services, Beyond Blue, Lifeline. They're just the ones I know off the top of my head, but I know that you can call Lifeline. Is it 24 hours a day?
Absolutely. They are 24/7. There's many organisations that are 24/7. And I think there's a really amazing website that's been established by our government called Head to Health. Mm-hmm. It's been established with the purpose of centralising information and centralising supports and services and things like that. You can even go online and actually do a quiz. So if you're not feeling the best and you're like, I'm not sure what these emotions are, you jump online to that quiz, and it will sort of has an algorithm that will then direct you to certain supports.
Wow.
There's loads of online free services in there. So, for example, there's a service called Mood Gym, which is for 16 to 25-year-olds to help lift your mood. There's another one around supporting anxiety called This Way Up. And you can access all of those through this one website. So it's a really great resource. And never forget Kids Helpline. So even though it's called Kids Helpline, it's up to age 25. And honestly, their resources are amazing. From a positive mental wellbeing place. I would follow them on your Instagram. Their posts are amazing and so much education.
Just little tidbits sometimes on your Instagram. And we'll link all of these as well.
Good.
So in the caption, or I'll figure out some other way to link everything, so it's not just we're not just spitting words out. It's actual resources that people can access. So I really love you saying check in on your friends, message them, go for a walk, etc., do little things. So, you've identified that they're struggling, you've identified that somebody is struggling. How, apart from sharing resources and things like that, can you provide support once you recognise your friends or your peers probably aren't in a great spot?
I think the first thing is around early intervention. Now, you can never force anybody to go and seek support, and, they need to be empowered and have, it needs to come from them. So there is that moment where, if it's too difficult for them to have face-to-face, then they can explore the range of online services. But if they are open and they've talked to a trusted person like yourself or a family member, then the first really good place is the GP. They're so central in supporting that care. They are able to direct people to other supports and refer to counselling services and psychology services. So that's probably the most important, would be to support that if they're open. And so many times, Nicole, we've heard our lived experience advisors tell us that making that first phone call is often the hardest. So as a support person, you can go with them. You can help develop a set of questions and support them in that journey as well, even making the appointment. So I think the other is there's really amazing range of counselling services. I know the colleges often have access to those counselling and support.
And I think the uni do free, they do 5 free sessions, or it might even be more actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so just, I guess, tapping into the resources that you have around you.
Exactly, because there is support out there and you have to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another, Tess, just one to add, which is another really great one. Beyond Blue have a program called New Access. So it's a mental wellbeing coaching program where you can pick the phone up and actually have counselling support from someone. So it's probably more for people who are down, just in those early stages of where they might be a little bit worried. And they'll always triage either, step people up or step people down and match their care needs. And that's a big part of what GPs do as well. And some of them will have access to mental health nurses within their teams and refer maybe to Headspace and others. And, of course, we've also got to be really mindful. We've done a lot of work out in our rural and remote regions, and our colleges will have people from those, areas where there's not always a GP in town. So, always knowing that there is a phone call away. We also know that some will utilise RFDS, for example, and they've got a telephone service.
That's the Royal Flying Doctor Service.
Yeah, Royal Flying Doctors, and they've got access to mental health support and so forth. So honestly, pick up the phone, talk to a trusted person, and then the GP's central in supporting your care. And then obviously if someone's really unwell, they'll, have other support services like psychiatrists and others and psychologists that can help support people.
And I guess something I'd just love to mention is I guess sometimes people can be worried that their condition is not bad enough. And, I think it comes back to us saying mental health is such a scale, it's a spectrum, and these resources are out there to help people no matter how little or how much they're struggling. No one is going to turn you away. You're not going to go to a GP and they're going to say, actually, you're not struggling enough for me to refer you to a psychologist or a counsellor or anyone. You're not going to call up Lifeline and they're going to hang up on you. I think it's just, as you said, taking that first step is really the trickiest, and having people, I guess, surrounding yourself with people who support you. Would you say is that one thing that you can, if you're struggling, would you say something that you can actively do is surround yourself with people?
In summary, to just say, make sure you've got a trusted group around you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a large group, 3 close friends you can talk to. I would recommend everybody gets a GP. You have a GP that looks after you. And I think we should all have a counsellor. I say that to all of my medical students, all my allied health students. We should all, have a GP and a counsellor.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ever reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just on that, as a support person, it can be really, really tricky when you're looking after somebody else to often forget that actually you need to look after yourself as well. So do you have any, could you tell us the importance of support people needing support as well? How can they then seek that support and look after themselves?
Yeah, great question, because like we said before, you've got to have a full battery to be a support person. So once again, I think it's all about being connected. We know from the Good Life, from the 85-year longitudinal study, that it is all about warm, quality relationships. And so you've got to make sure you're surrounded by people that have your back, that, you can talk to, that you can name what's going on for you, and that they're there for you. And self-compassion is key as well. Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. That is massive. Be kind, have kind thoughts to yourself. And then, think about what it is that gives you meaning and brings you joy.
Yeah, I really like that.
Try and engage in that with the people that you're connected with. So going hiking or, whatever it is that floats your boat. For me, I love the beach. I love walking, swimming at the beach. I love yoga. I love reading. So I try and fill my life with that, and I encourage everyone to
I guess I kind of when I am struggling, I like to write a list of things that bring me joy, and I like to do, and it sounds silly because it sounds so simple, but sometimes it just takes, I like to go for a walk and get a coffee in the morning. Coffee brings me a lot of joy, getting coffee with my friends. Yeah, absolutely. Reading, doing yoga, all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of here's a list of things that bring me joy. Maybe I'll pin it up on my board or on my door or keep it on my phone or something. And then it's when I'm not feeling super, super great, I can, as a first point of call, I'm not saying that this will always solve everything, but kind of look at that list and say, what's something I can do that will bring me joy today? And I guess I'm a really big advocate for taking time out of your week, of your day, to do little things for yourself. I think that's super important, especially if you're supporting a lot of people around you as well. As you said, look after yourself, have self-compassion for yourself.
Oh, that's so good. And that's what we all should be doing, is prioritizing our own self-care. I think too often people think, oh, no, I've got too much else to do. I'll do that later. And they don't get around to going for that walk or going for a coffee and connecting with people. But you will be so much more productive in your life, at uni, if you take time like you're doing. And I love that, the list. I also love a gratitude list. And once again, we talk about it, but there's research, there's evidence base, it tames our amygdala. So there is brain neuroscience telling us that, gratitude lists are great. They'll release dopamine, and, connecting with people also does the same.
The other thing the list does is it gives you a sense of achievement.
And control as well.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And there's things in your life that you can't control, right? So, you can't control how someone else acts, or you can't control the weather. But what you can control is what you do and how you respond to others. And so, we've seen lists used in all sorts of different ways. And even we know psychologists are using lists for people in different ways. There's, you can do quadrants, you can do, prioritize on what's the most important, because often we'll want to tackle the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But in fact, we know we're most productive and we can get into flow in the morning. So, tackle the hard stuff first and then leave the other stuff for later.
Yeah.
So it can, work for you in so many different positive ways. And they're those mental fitness tools that we need to have in our toolbox, so that, when things get tricky, we remember to go back to that and go, okay, I can do these things. And I think, default back to those things that work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I was speaking to my psychologist the other day, and it's something I struggle with, is sometimes when you have really bad days, you feel like you can't achieve anything, right? And sometimes you have medium days and sometimes you have great days. So she said to me, create A-list, B-list, and C-list. I don't know, is this something you've heard of?
Yes,
and and it's an A-list is, you're having an amazing day. Let's put on there exercise. Let's put on there socializing, maybe doing uni, maybe calling your family. B-list is I'm not bedridden and I'm not, super can't do anything today, but I'm not feeling like I can achieve a lot. And then C-list is, you actually can't achieve very much. What can you do on that day to make yourself feel better? So, yeah, that's something I've been applying to my own life, and I wanted to share. I thought it was a really clever idea.
That's great. And thank you for sharing, because this is what helps lived experience. People are saying, this is what works for me. We've had a lot of our lived experience participants saying even just lying on the bed, listening to a song for 3 minutes and really thinking about the lyrics is like mindfulness and a nice way to meditate. So that's another good little hack.
Yeah, love that.
And if that sort of anxiety starts to creep in, utilising breath work and utilising, and that's really come to its fore in the last few years. And we know from a neuroscience, brain science perspective that it really makes a difference. For example, we know that there are emergency departments around our country who are using breath work with their ED teams.
Wow.
Right? If a trauma's coming in or something's coming in, they'll practice that breath work ready to walk in to what they're facing because they need to be calm and so forth. So it can be used in all sorts of different ways. And Nicole, you're a big fan of
I love it. Andrew Huberman, the physiological sigh, which I think I taught, or you lovely young
You
people.
have taught me this, and it is something that I use all the time. So, yes, please share.
So this is from Dr. Andrew Huberman, and it is literally something we use in the medical school before going into a clinical scenario, and it is 3 breaths. So it's 2 breaths in and then a longer exhale. So I do it all through my nose, but it can all be done 2 breaths in through your nose and then a breath out through your mouth. But the most important thing is that the exhale is longer. So, and it's that longer exhale that's calming our nervous system. So sort of taking us from the sympathetic nervous system into our parasympathetic. And it is the quickest, simplest little hack that'll just calm your nervous system and help you. So hopefully that will help some of the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I even use it if I'm in traffic. Traffic is something that really grinds my gears. Red lights. Yes. Yeah, I know. And so I remember when I'm in traffic, I remember that you said, okay, 2 breaths in, 1 breath out. And I can actually feel myself, or I like to imagine myself going from my sympathetic to my parasympathetic nervous system. I'm like, okay, now I'm relaxed. So yeah, it's great.
The visual of the red zone, you're in fight, flight, which is what we call the red zone. And then we get more to our purple or our blue zone where we're calmer and we can cope.
Yep.
And I think this would help with road rage if a lot of people could just do this simple breath.
Yeah.
And they do say to do sort of 3 cycles, but I'm with you, Tess. I find just doing that 1 cycle will just calm me down. The 2 breaths in, 1 breath out.
Yeah.
And even if you're nervous before a presentation or whatever it might be, the physiological sigh will help.
Yeah, totally. We should have done it just before we started this podcast, actually. We could have all done it together.
I'm nervous because we're all friends.
Exactly.
We were doing it before the Telstra presentation when we were down at the awards.
Yes.
There was a lot of physiological sigh happening, because I was nervous. We had a 10-minute sort of stand-up pitch that we had to do. So
and then we'd learn off by heart. And so we didn't want to let each other down. I think that was the biggest thing to try and remember. And we didn't sleep the night before much either, which is another thing when we talk about mental fitness, how much better you are if you can get some sleep.
Yeah.
And sleep, that breath will help you if you are feeling overwhelmed when you're going to sleep as well. So do remember that.
Yeah.
I use breath a lot just to help me relax into sleep. So, you definitely manage things better if you've slept well, you've eaten well, you've exercised, and then we use breath work.
Yeah, I really love that. Would you say we know out there is so much research about how much sleep impacts your day-to-day functioning? If you don't get a great night's sleep, the next day can be totally whacked out. Mm-hmm. So what would you say are some sleep strategies? I personally know the importance of sleep hygiene and things like that, but could you maybe talk about some strategies for nighttime routine that could help
too? I'm really passionate about sleep. And so I think it's about trying to calm your body maybe 2 hours before you go to bed. The latest research is watching TV is not so bad, but it's actually being doom scrolling or being on social media is creating, brain waves. So reading is one of the best things you could do just half an hour before you go to bed and kind of having a routine. The other evidence base is trying to have a same wake sleep cycle. So trying to get to bed at the same time, waking up or within a half an hour and getting morning light as soon as you wake. Just walking outside. Oh, grateful for another day. That's also good because you're getting that gratefulness, but you're seeing morning light, helps with cortisol, helps you regulate, and then you have hopefully a better day. But there's going to be times when we don't sleep well, when our brains are overactive, and it's just to be calm in those moments. I love Dr. Matt Walker. So he is our sleep scientist. He wrote the book, Why We Sleep, and he says exactly that. Just try and stay calm, just breathe, because there's going to be times when you can't sleep. And if you get yourself worked up, it creates kind of a bit of a vicious cycle.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating when you need to go to sleep because you have a big day tomorrow, you have a presentation, whatever. You want to wake up early and go for a walk or a run, and you just cannot fall asleep. So I love the app Insight Timer.
Okay.
Which has sleep meditations on it. I know there's heaps out there, but they're just like you can choose 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever. And then and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I've actually completed a sleep meditation because it sends you to sleep eventually. And I guess I love what you said about just, remaining calm, and you will get to sleep eventually. But yeah, accessing those sorts of tools that can aid you.
I love those tools. The Calm app's really great as well. The other thing I would think is just lying there resting with your eyes closed is great. So, you know what I mean? You might not fall asleep, but you're resting, which is what we did the night before the Telstra Awards. We had our eye masks on just going, oh, well, we are resting our bodies ready for the next day.
And music as well. That can help. And the digital boundaries. That's the other one. Turn your notifications off. If you're worried, you can put settings where people can call you, like family, things like that. But yeah, having those boundaries in place are so essential. And particularly, with our younger generation, we do have people gaming and doing other things, making sure there's boundaries around that as well, and making sure you go, right, I'm only going to do this until 11 o'clock and then I'm going to turn it off and allow time to go to sleep, whatever those sleep-wake times are.
So what would you say the optimal on not going on screens is? Obviously, it's easier said than done, but an hour, half an hour, 2 hours?
They are saying 2 hours. All the evidence points to 2 hours prior. But everyone's, I suppose, different in what they can cope with.
Yeah.
The other thing is obviously caffeinated drinks, just also trying to stop them around midday. But everyone's different too, how they metabolize. You just got to figure out what's working for you.
Yeah. And I guess it's tricky when often we're up doing uni quite late as well on a screen. So then that's but
you're
a bit
so
tricky.
Tired anyway. So hopefully half an hour, even if you just read or do something or listen to music.
Yeah. So it's still beneficial to not have those screens probably at least half an hour before bed sort of thing, winding down. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great.
And Tess, just on that with the uni and you're up late nights and so forth, if you're seeing a pattern where that's happening regularly, where you're very last minute, there's assignments being done, and it's not just a one-off, it's happening regularly, that's where you need to check in and go, have a look at sort of the information around procrastination. Is there something more going on? Is there some perfectionist traits in there that are making you re-look over this work? Because often what we tend to do is avoid things, right? If something's tricky, and assignments can be one of those things. So, setting yourself up so that your study plan and you're aware if you are procrastinating. So you're putting practices in place to, be able to better manage that so you're not doing that last minute night run with the, screen.
Yeah, totally. Well, procrastination is definitely a huge thing for me, for a lot of my friends. Do you have any advice on how we can procrastinate less? I'm throwing you this one, but yeah, I'd love to know.
Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, look, I think the main thing is firstly recognising it. And then secondly, there's a whole range of things you can do to manage that. Sort of naming what those issues are, like what's causing that procrastination. But there's little hacks like starting early in the morning. Make sure you do it at a time when you have flow. But actually, for some uni students, it might be after lunch if depending on what you've done in the morning. So that flow period's important. Also finding that, that ability to, just get things on paper. Sometimes we just find it really hard to even start. So it might be doing a memo, just talking into a voicemail. Or honestly, there's actually research coming out that walking supports creativity. So go for a half-hour walk have something near you to put in your notes in your phone or something so those ideas can pop through, because that will improve your productivity. Nick, have you got some other ideas? Or?
No, we've got a whole module on it, so we might have to share that with you.
Yeah, I'd love that. Totally.
Just tips, it's going to help so much. But I do agree, just getting something down, and I love the voice memo. So just saying something in and then trying to type and get going.
Yeah, totally. Anything's better than nothing, I guess. And I guess if you're not feeling like, okay, I'm actually at a full brain block, you can, get out, go for a walk.
No, that is brilliant, because you're only going to get more frustrated by sitting there and procrastinate more. As you get out, hopefully you will be creative.
Yeah, I really like that.
There's some people where the unhelpful perfectionism starts to take over, and it's often around fear of failure. And that's for some people, that will be the reason why they're procrastinating. So understanding what those triggers are and being able to overcome that by getting started, having those practices, that list you talked about before, the ABC, you could convert that into your study world. Like, what are those things that can help me to get started, and start brainstorming them, putting them up. I heard someone the other day talk about, the Red Frogs give you guys a calendar, and it really helps because you can see up there when things are due.
Yep.
So making notes,
love calendars,
like a week earlier, things like that to help you get started.
I also like putting reminders in my diary, like assignments due in 1 month, assignments due in 2 weeks, and then that kind of like kick starts you, and you're like, oh, okay, actually, maybe I need to start, because I am such a typical procrastinator. So,
and universities have amazing, they've got whole centres that will support you in your time management and give you lots of tips. So we would encourage, all uni students to access those services. And
do you use paper calendars, or are you online?
I have I'm a bad example because I have like 6 different ones. So I have my monthly whiteboard, which has everything on it, and then I have a weekly paper one, which, because I like to rip it out and be like, okay, new week. Then I have daily to-do lists. Then I have weekly, I don't know, I have heaps because I'm such a brain dumper. So I have stuff for brain dumping. I have stuff that I can visually see. And then I have everything on my online as well, so that I can access it on my phone and my computer. So I guess like it's organized chaos, but I've figured out that each calendar has a different purpose for me almost, and anyone else looking in would be like, oh my gosh, you are ridiculous with having 6 different calendars. But yeah, it makes sense to me, and I kind of just sit down at the beginning of each month and update everything. So then I have a month where I'm like, okay, this is exactly what's going on. Yeah.
You sound like a visual learner.
Yeah,
Tess.
I think so.
And so, using like an A4 or, getting your notes from the semester and actually starting to visually put that up is a really great strategy to help, so that, even you can do your weekly or fortnightly visual, because then when you come to the end of the semester, you've got those visual cues there for you, and it helps you, you're critically analysing when you're doing something visual, because you're just summarising the content and putting it there. So that's another good
I like that
hack to sort of overcome if you're struggling.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, we've kind of really spoken about management strategies, but I guess how would you say everybody can aim to create good mental well-being?
Once again, I think it's about being connected. It's about having that support group around you, people that you trust, that you feel supported, family, friends, university friends. And I think it's also feeling like you belong to a community. We go back to the Harvard study, that 85-year-old study. It is so important that you realize that it's about the quality of your relationships. And then we talked about things that bring you joy, things that give you meaning, things that float your boat, things that fill your battery, things that fill your cup. You've got to figure out who you are. And, we talk about that with our values. What do we value? What is it that brings us joy? And try and live a life incorporating all of those things. I highly recommend people do just a little bit of self-searching and figuring out what is it that really brings them joy.
Yeah, I really love that. I guess I was also going to ask, sometimes it can be pretty overwhelming if you feel like you're in a space where you aren't with the people that you feel like you're completely supported by. And I guess, you know, that can happen, like, not to make it all about college, but that can happen a lot at college because you start in O week and you are surrounded by so many people and it's nerve-wracking, especially if you don't know anyone. So what would you say, how can you kind of find people that are more aligned with your own values, I guess, if people maybe listening are saying, oh, there's probably not people around me that I can super trust. How can they seek out those people, I guess?
I think it's about having things in common. You know, if you find, you know, that you've got certain interests, it's about exploring that and not being afraid to go up and speak to staff to find out what those are. You know, and also, you know, reaching out within your university as well. So often there's lots of clubs, lots of societies where there may be an interest that, you know, there may not be at the college environment. But the other thing's getting involved. Like for some people, though, if you're an introvert, you're not used to that, that's hard.
It's so tricky.
So, but it is sometimes about getting outside your comfort zone. That is part of that transition into adulthood, is doing things that, you know, may be tricky at times. So trying things, having a go at Choral Fest, having a go at, you know, trying to get into a sports team. There's so much variety and so many opportunities for people at college life and at university to explore. And then, you know, if there's still challenges there, that's, you know, definitely reach out and talk to other people. And there will be people you can connect with, including like your whole cohort that you're studying with as well. There might be people in your classes that, you know, you're already got common ground because you're already studying the same thing. So, you know, we do know that social isolation and loneliness is on the increase. It's a paradox with our technology that even though we're connected, it's causing more disconnection. We know that. But there may be peers online. We know there's really good support forums and things online. And we know that an organisation called Reach Out has online forums and things like that. So
which I can link again. Yeah,
absolutely. Our biggest advice is always reach out for support and help, even if it's in an online forum where you can connect. And we also know that our college students are, you know, trained up, most of them in mental wellbeing, and to spot those signs, you know, if someone's withdrawing or they're a bit quieter, and helping navigate. You know, everyone has a role to play, even as a bystander, if you notice someone, you know, withdrawing, because that's the first sign if something's not quite right. Withdrawal is probably one of the first things you'll see. So, helping them out in that way.
Yeah, I really like that. And also on the rise is like run and walk clubs. Yes. If you've seen that all over social media, like I know at Women's we try and do one once a week or like a little boot camp or something like that. But even getting out in like the broader community, there's heaps of running clubs where you can also walk, because I'm not a runner at all. So, like just doing little stuff like that. And that's also staying connected, exercising, you know, it's hitting a few birds with one stone.
I think the key is community. It is finding like-minded people, and there's so many out there. But it's like you guys said, it's taking the first step.
Yeah, I really like that. So
what would you say to your best friend? Do it. Say it to yourself and go and join a community.
Yeah, so I guess
volunteering as well is another one. Giving back. Because, you know, you're going to find if you've got a certain passion in a certain area, you know, there's bound to be volunteer and support work that you can do to.
That was something I was going to mention as well, because, you know, sometimes me personally, I'm not super sporty, I'm not super musical, anything like that, but I find a lot of joy in giving back and things like that. So, you know, whether that's going and visiting a community home or, you know, gardening or something like that, like little things, I think, you know, that's another way of connecting as well. You don't have to be on a sporting team or in a band or stuff like that. Yeah.
That's right.
So I really love that.
There's whale watching, you know, you can help with the humpback whales and record them. Orange Sky, they're always looking for volunteers, but there's so much here.
I agree. So I guess drawing back, it's kind of, you know, those management strategies that lessen impacts of your mental health, but also can create mental well-being. We were saying sleep, we were saying nutrition, and again, just coming back to staying connected and finding, I really like what you said about doing self-searching. So, you know, kind of think about what it is that brings you joy, what are your values, and what do you want to get out of life almost, like not to ask the bigger questions, but yeah, what do you enjoy on a day-to-day basis, and then finding connected humans.
You're talking about your sense of purpose, and that sometimes ebbs and flows in life as well. But, and likewise with, living by your values, they typically come from your family environment. But as you move through the workforce and your life changes, your values may slightly change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess it is important to note that sometimes you may do all of these things to create positive mental well-being, but you still may struggle. I personally know this has happened to me, and you were talking about at the beginning, a lot of people come a bit unstuck when they start uni and, they move out of home and things like that. I definitely found last year, as a personal anecdote, like no matter how hard I tried to go on a walk every day, socialize with friends, things like that, there's still something that's not quite right, and these strategies just weren't enough. So for listeners who may be struggling with this feeling, what point would you say let's seek professional help?
Oh, early, Tess, as soon as you notice those things, and as we said earlier, reaching out to someone, a trusted person, reaching out to a counsellor, going online, and when you're ready, ideally, having that GP. Who can centrally coordinate, that trusted family doctor that can support you is so essential. And they have a real care coordination role to play, our GPs, and they're so linked into the health system at all different levels. So they'll be able to support you. And important that you do take that step, because the earlier nip it in the bud, the better. But we do know that stigma still exists in our society.
Yeah, absolutely.
And often, historically stigma has existed. It's individuals sometimes feel ashamed, or they might be hesitant to seek help due to social attitudes. The recent research from the Headspace National Youth Survey, which was released last October, found that 57%, so that's 6 in 10 people, felt there was still stigma around mental health.
Wow.
And 40% of those people prefer to deal with it on their own. And they stated that the main reason they're dealing on their own is they're worried about what other people might think. So, this is something that's also widespread across other ages. So despite the efforts, there's incredible work happening around our country, around raising awareness in our country. Stigma still exists, and we have a long way to go. And we really feel we're playing our part at ConnectedLE in building mental health literacy together with a lot of other organisations, because it is a major cause of discrimination and exclusion. It can make recovery harder and cause social isolation. So we really believe there's a number of tips. Did you want to hear them, Tess? We have ideas and tips around
I'd love to.
How to overcome that.
Yep, let's hear it.
Education's probably the first one.
I would say it all starts with education. Awareness and mental health literacy, it's key. I mean, it's knowing what signs to look for and noticing those subtle changes. I think it's about checking in regularly. Research tells us that higher levels of social support are associated with positive help-seeking attitudes and intentions. And then, like we said, it's being brave to have those conversations, to deeply listen, and then being able to connect people to information, supports and services.
Yeah.
And I think, Tess, your podcast here is a really good example of normalising it.
Yeah.
Normalising mental health, normalising all those practical things we can do to support our mental well-being. So talking about it, hearing stories, having those days where are you okay days and all of those. But what we do know is the conversation has to continue. You don't just stop there. So it's constantly talking about it. And we all have a role to play in that space. The other one is also to avoid seeing help seeking as a failure. So making sure that if someone is supporting to, seek help, that it's actually a positive thing that they can do about their well-being. But sometimes people have a lack of knowledge of where services are and things like that. So that's another reason why people may have
it's a barrier
to seek
totally.
help.
Yeah. Well, hopefully even just like this podcast we're doing today, it's opening up the conversation, it's continuing the conversation, and it's providing actual strategies for people to do. So, yeah,
That's
amazing.
it. And having a positive experience when they do seek help.
Exactly. So you want to give people, that your full attention. You want to have that open body language. You want to be able to communicate safely and securely and appropriately. You don't want problem solving. All our lived experience participants have said exactly that. They just want somebody to listen, to be there, to hold space. So I think that's really important. We remember that, just to validate, not to problem solve.
Yeah, I think that is so important, especially as a peer and as a friend. Don't problem solve, because, they're not asking you to solve their problems, but would you say referral's not problem solving, or it is problem solving?
No, it's not problem solving.
Yeah.
If you're connecting someone to information, support and services, you're giving them that information for them to make that choice. And so that's empowering, if anything.
Yeah, I really like that word, empowerment. And I guess the thing is, a lot of it, like even at the beginning of the podcast, we were mentioning you can go with your friends to these appointments and things like that, and you can suggest all of these amazing resources that are out there. But at the end of the day, it is up to the individual whether they want to pursue it. And yeah, not problem solving then really comes into that. Just give them all the tools that you can to empower them, and hope that then they feel supported enough to act on those.
And just showing up.
Yeah.
Constantly checking in, showing up, knowing that you're there, knowing that you care. And then if you are worried in any way and you're seeing their mental health decline, that's when you do step in and get those supports.
Yeah, totally.
For that person.
Yeah, I really love that.
I do too. And I think, like we've said all along, but it's the way that we talk about it, and that everyone has a role to play. You check in with others, you check in with yourself. That is key to good mental health and wellbeing.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, what would you say back to, being supportive friends and things like that, and recognizing the barriers that do exist, stigma, also access barriers, things like that. How can we support our friends who are apprehensive about seeking professional help?
Checking in with them is probably the main thing. And, asking those open-ended questions for, to check in, and also sending them information, little texts here and there. Because sometimes people might take a bit of time to process it, and they may not think, oh, there's anything wrong with me. But just by having that information, that awareness, they may then go, oh, gosh, I have noticed that my thinking patterns are like that. Oh, I didn't realise that I had that little inner self-critic in there that was affecting my thinking patterns, and I was not saying such kind things to myself. So it's just, giving them information, upskilling yourself and knowing what's out there can really make a difference.
Yeah, I really love that. And then I guess I'd love to ask you, as such amazing advocates for proactive mental wellbeing, what changes do you hope to see in how this mental health is addressed on a societal level?
We believe that the biggest gains that can be made are probably in terms of prevention and early intervention. And we know that education is playing such a big role here. We want to foster a society. We want to play our part in, having those resources to support people and their mental health needs.
Yeah.
Look, we are all part of a bigger system, and we know the health system, people will flow between different parts of the health system. So, ideally we want to really support that upstream, so if people are needing those more acute services or secondary, tertiary services, they've got access, and then they can get access. We do know there's bottlenecks. We know we've got a workforce shortage. We know things are going on in our country that is affecting access. But what we want to do is be really proactive, so we work to prevent them in the first place. So building that mental health literacy, and we're really proud at ConnectedLE to be playing a part in building a mentally healthy Australia, and really supporting our young people through our peer responder course at universities and other courses. We've deliberately done them across the lifespan with our courses. We've got one for the primary school, we've got one for teachers to be able to spot signs in their students, our peer responder for uni students, and we're just releasing our mental wellbeing co-responder course, which is for the broader adult population, and then one for healthy ageing.
Yeah, you guys are doing an amazing thing here. Like, you are frontline responders, you are helping create this change at a societal level. So I know you are so proud, but just to reiterate that you are doing such wonderful things, and we're really appreciative that there are people out there like you two that are seeing this problem and tackling it front on. So yeah, congrats.
Yes, that means a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Tess. Really appreciate that. And really hoping to make a ripple effect.
Yeah,
with the
and you definitely are. It starts somewhere. So, yeah, amazing. And then as hugely influential women that you are in the mental health space, in the university space, everything, I would like to conclude by asking you a little question of who is the most influential woman in both of your lives and why.
Wow.
Putting you on the spot a bit, sorry.
Oh my goodness.
Love that question. For me, it sounds cliche, but it would have to be my mum. She's just such a positive role model. She's almost 80 and she's in New Zealand doing amazing jet boating and amazing things. And I just think, wow, she's very positive. She lost her husband early on, and yeah, she's just been really resilient. And so definitely it's my mum.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Oh, isn't this interesting? I went to the generation above me and the generation below. So it's my mum and my daughter, who's in the same age bracket as you, Tess, in her early 20s. And my mum, because she was one of those people, she was a little bit of a groundbreaker in her work. She had her own business. So I saw this independent woman that managed, a household at a time when that didn't tend to happen. She's thriving and resilient, had some health issues, but she's got that positive mindset that she bounces back. And then my daughter, because I've seen her ebb and flow and struggle in some areas where she's, particularly I suppose it's around her ambitions and what she was wanting to do with her life. And she didn't get into her first course that she wanted to do originally. So she's had to navigate that, do other courses at uni, and she's finally got in. So it's that grit, it's that resilience, it's that being able to bounce back when things were tough. Seeing both of those women thriving throughout their lives have really been an inspiration.
Yeah, that's lovely. You have to send her this so that she'll hear it.
Yes,
yeah. Well, I would love to say a massive thank you to both of you for coming on this journey with me and just, sharing such amazing, wonderful, actual takeaways for people who are listening and can go, okay, I can apply that to my life now. Mental health is so topical, and yeah, you're helping create, reduce barriers and stigma. So yeah, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Tess, and thank you for shining a light on ConnectedLE and what we're doing and supporting us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Tess.
No worries.